Hey everyone, it's your Sally Coach, and today we're going to be going over part B, the hypothesis. So let's get started. So starting off with the hypothesis, a few things that we want to keep in mind is that this needs to be a relationship between the dependent to independent variables. So we're going to be talking about how the dependent variable is affected when we are changing the independent variable. And whenever we are saying this in our hypothesis, we need to use our levels of independent variable. So levels, this means our changes. So how exactly are we changing the independent variables, and how is the subject being changed as well? We're going to be using that to figure out our hypothesis and then see how that affects our dependent variable. Next, we need to have an idea of what this experiment or hypothesis will prove. So we're going to be having to take a step in a certain direction to show that this hypothesis is going to go towards this type of aviation or aerodynamics, right? That kind of topic, as well as what's going to happen about that topic. Like, is the plane going to go slower, faster, all around that type of levels. So we need to be talking about what our hypothesis is going to be saying, and using adjectives to prove these things. Lastly, we want to have some type of proving in it. This is the whole hypothesis, using evidence, our reasoning, all of that, to say what direction our idea is going in. So we're going to be using really good adjectives and really scientific nouns, such as like certain laws or certain theories that we know in mind, and using very good vocabulary so that our point gets across well. Next, let's look at our rubric for it, and we can see that it's talking about our rationale, which is the idea that we want to take and which direction we are putting that in. Next is the statement that gives a specific direction. Again, a stand is taken. So both of those are pretty much like in the same type of rubric, except a rationale means more of levels of independent variable. And lastly, we have our statement predicting a relationship, which is what I talked about first, how the dependent variable is going to be affected from changing our independent variable. And now let's look at our sentence starter, which says the increase or decrease of the subjects, which is going to be our plane, subject's independent variable will cause the subject to some type of change. This could be some sort of adjective that's used to talk about maybe sink, slow, hurry, and so on, due to a scientific noun, which is what I was going back to before, our proof, our theory, law, and so on, acting upon the subject, therefore proving that the levels of independent variable, so how we are changing our independent variable, will cause the subject to degrade or advance, as in that's our stand, talking about how it's going to go forward or away from our dependent variable. So how will our dependent variable be affected by our independent variable? Therefore, ending off our sentence as to degrade or advance in dependent variable, which we're going to see in this next slide. So now we're going to see what our final hypothesis will be. So this is going to say the increase of the plane's weight and texture will cause the plane to hurry, which is our adjective right there, a good adjective to prove it, due to more friction, which is going to be our scientific noun. We won't be using a theory or a law, but we need to use some sort of scientific vocabulary to get these points. Acting upon the plane, therefore proving that the construction cardstock paper, which brings in our levels of independent variable, will cause the plane to degrade right there. That's going to be our options, as in it's going to go forward or away from a certain the topic of our idea. So we're going to be choosing degrade in distance and speed. So that's going to be the end of our B hypothesis video, and we're going to go on to C next. So thank you for listening.